Good morning. You're watching Breakfast on Sky News. Thousands of Syrians here in the UK celebrated the fall of Bashar al-Assad's regime in gatherings across the country, and many of them have vowed to return back home. Well, we can speak now to Dr. Haian Dukhan, a lecturer in politics and international relations at Teesside University, who came to the UK from Syria back in 2012. Really appreciate you sharing your time for us this morning. With regards to the situation, the such speedy situation over the last couple of days, how are you feeling watching the events back in Syria?
It's very emotional day, I would say, for Syrians. I mean, this is big, right? This is an authoritarian regime that ruled like Syrians for 53 years. Because when we talk about Assad, the current president, we shouldn't forget, obviously, that he is the son of the previous president, Hafez al-Assad, who ruled Syria for many decades. So this is a huge for Syrian. Actually, this is something that we can compare to the fall of the Berlin Wall and the fall of the Soviet Union and all that kind of joy and happiness that spread across Eastern Europe in 1991. I would say Syrians have similar feelings now in terms of what is happening regarding the fall of the Assad regime. And so it's no wonder that we are seeing people celebrating all over the world, actually. The Syrian diaspora that has been displaced as a result of many years of the war are celebrating across the world, actually.
You came to the UK to study in 2012. You've not been back since, 12 years on. What's your feelings about Syria and possibly returning to Syria now that the Assad regime has fallen?
We are full of hope actually about the possibility of going back. Obviously, I haven't been able to go back as a result of the fact that there is an authoritarian regime there, and I've been conducting research about this nature of this authoritarian regime. So to think now about the possibility of going back to Syria is an amazing thing, and to think about the possibility of contributing to the development and the reconstruction of the country. Of course, despite all the fears that we have about the future, but we are at least able to dream about this like coming soon.
We know what the Assad regime looked like, 50 years of both him and his father. What does the future for Syria look like now? Because there are so many groups that will be vying for power and influence. There's obviously the Prime Minister who's said he wants to stay in Damascus to kind of bring about a continuity government, to bring about that transition of power. But what does the future governance of the country look like, and who will lead it?
There are so many challenges obviously lying ahead. I mean, there are fears about what kind of government we are going to have there. Are the rebels going to continue ruling the country? What about all the sectarian divisions in the country? Are we going to overcome them or not? But obviously, these fears should not prevent us from moving forward, because if we were to kind of assume that authoritarianism provides stability and that we should keep an authoritarian regime, that means we will never move forward. So I think this is a step forward for Syria. The current prime minister actually kind of has been asked more or less to step down by the rebels. And we are going to have a new prime minister who was at some point of time in Syria and defected from the Syrian regime early on at the early stages of the Syrian uprising. So we are going to witness an era where there will be some government officials who defected from the regime and have expertise and knowledge about how to run the country, who will hopefully go back to Damascus and cooperate with what is left of the state institutions in order to continue in the coming stages. But obviously, the challenges and the difficulties kind of exist, and it's going to be a long way for Syria to overcome them.
How do international actors respond to this? Because Syria has been this area of the world where so many different countries have wanted to exert control and influence, whether that's the Turks, the Iranians, the Russians, the Americans, even the French and the British striking back against the Assad government following those chlorine gas attacks in 2018. There has been so much focus and attention, Islamic State and the pushback, the international coalition fighting against that when it was also in control of large swathes of Syria. Considering that so
Yes,
many
there are so
countries have
many.
got their involvement, what do they do?
As you mentioned, there are so many regional and international and domestic actors like involved in this. This is kind of a big battle really for Syria, and I see what happened in Syria as a blow in the first place to Russia and Putin's project in Syria as well. There are so many questions about what is the fate of the Russian military bases, for example, on the Mediterranean. Obviously, Iranian military influence in Syria will be diminished as a result of what happened in Syria, and that is going to cut ties between Iran and Hezbollah and Lebanon. So this is going to have a huge ramifications. I think the West is watching closely now to see what is going to happen because obviously HTS, which has been the main rebel group, is designated as a terrorist organization, and its leader Abu Muhammad al-Jolani is on the wanted list for the US. They are going to watch closely what is going to happen in Syria and take decisions based on that. But I think they are definitely more or less, I would say, kind of happy about the fall of the Assad regime because this is, as I mentioned, is a direct blow to Putin's project in Syria and to the Iranian influence in Syria as well. So I would say that Turkey now holds most of the cards when it comes to the Syrian regime, mainly because these rebels groups had connection with Turkey. They received kind of funding and probably training as well. We're not kind of sure about that. But obviously, these groups have been going under training and supervision from probably Turkey over the past couple of years in order to enable them to launch this offensive against the Assad regime. So Turkey is going to be a very important critical player here that is going to fill the vacuum left by the departure of the Iranian militias and possibly the Russians. I guess, as I mentioned, we're still unsure about the fate of the two Russian military bases on the Mediterranean.
Dr. Haian Dukhan, really appreciate you sharing your time with us this morning. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.